Welcome to The Cow Behind the Barn, a podcast exploring humanity, the world, and the divine as experienced and interpreted by an artist. I'm Kevin Caldwell, a co-founder of the Table Collective. Where is he coming from? My guess is that people have asked some version of that question about me more than a few times. After a typical dad joke, or when I was being serious as a leader when it was part of my job to communicate vision regularly and clearly. But I know at times I left people scratching their heads. We tend to ask it sarcastically when we're confused by something someone did or said. Right now, though, literally, where am I coming from? In the last episode, I said I wanted to get more personal about all this, about being raised in Bakersfield, California, memories of early childhood in Granada Hills, California, birth in Arcadia, California, going back to where I was conceived, Phoenix, Arizona. When I imagine the implications of quantum thinking and our physical makeup, I find myself more and more convinced that the things that make us who we are drawn from much more than our genetic history or early family environment. We're also made up of the soil, the air, the water, and the generations of people who touched that soil and breathed that air and drank the water in those places. The people before us who came from and came to and lived in the places of our history. Entanglement and connection is everywhere, and that's why I'm going back to Phoenix. My Caldwell people originally migrated to Phoenix from Alabama, especially from Caldwell, Alabama, not far outside Birmingham. On my mother's side, my Morris and McKnight people came to Arizona from Illinois and Indiana and Kansas. I'm entangled with those places and other people from there too, and so on all the way back through history, but I have to draw a line somewhere, so for me it's Phoenix. For reasons I've not been able to discover, my ancestors found their way to Arizona. And although my ancestors would have lined up on opposite sides in the Civil War, in Phoenix they met, married, and began families. By the way, my maternal grandmother, Idri Morris, is the one who painted the cow behind the barn picture. But here I'm going to talk about my birth father's mother, Leona Caldwell. She was an artist and a businesswoman, and became a single mother of two when my grandfather died of alcohol-related heart disease in his 40s. In fact, he died on the front porch one night trying to get from his car to the house. She and my dad, a teenager at the time, found him there in the morning. Leona Caldwell's distinctive designs, applied to lines of clothing and ceramics and jewelry, are well known in certain circles. A search online using her name and Phoenix will turn up a lot of that story. Her designs were inspired by themes from the Hohokam people, the indigenous inhabitants over many centuries in what is now Phoenix and far beyond. My guess is that today she may have been accused of appropriation, and I'm holding that in my heart as I probe this aspect of my entanglement with her and with the indigenous peoples of the area. The Hohokam built the most sophisticated network of canals in the pre-contact Western Hemisphere, which makes it ironic, painful, evil, in fact, that the U.S. government built dams to redirect water, blocking rivers upstream, and even took over the canal systems themselves. Typical of the injustices and oppression experienced by the original inhabitants over generations of encounters with the Spanish and with white Americans throughout the land. Descending from the Hohokam were the Akimel Odam, or river people. Central to their way of life was the river, as their name might imply, which they considered holy. And that makes a lot of sense when one considers the environment they lived in. This is the place to which my people migrated, joining a long line of migrations into Hohokam and Akimel territory, including the Spanish and the earliest white settlers, as well as other indigenous peoples such as the Apache, with whom the Akimel and others held long-standing bitter conflicts. All of this got me thinking about my entanglement with Phoenix in a different way, what I call the psychic history of a place. And I want to touch on three aspects of what I mean by that. Places share a psychic history of pain and loss, a psychic history of the holy and the haunted, and a psychic history of individuals, all sort of a microcosm of all of that, like a core sample. Let me talk first about psychic history of pain and loss. It's becoming common in the USA and elsewhere to begin a meeting with or issue statements referring to some sort of a land acknowledgement, which is a way of declaring who originally dwelt there and their unique relationship to the land, stating the obvious reality that others now occupy and make use of it. Such a gesture can become an empty gesture, or worse, even a type of virtue signaling. Whether intended or not, it can be paternalistic and tone-deaf. So I want to be sensitive about how I do what I'm about to do here. The fact is that I was conceived in a place with a history. So were you, of course. I'm going to focus on Phoenix, but I spent my early years in Granada Hills, which was the land of the Tongva people. And I lived on the land of the Tohon people in Bakersfield. And even as I was drafting notes for this paragraph, I was in Rohnert Park, on the land of the Southern Pomos. In my view of entanglement, I'm not only entangled with DNA with my own ancestors, and thus with whatever they did, good and bad and ugly and beautiful, in and to these places and to people there, I'm just as entangled with the Spanish and the early whites and all that they did. And so I'm also entangled with colonial oppression, with my grandmother's appropriation of the material culture of a people. Unintentional on her part, yes, but that's how privilege and appropriation often work. We don't even realize it when we do it. To name the reality is not necessarily to blame an individual who unknowingly exhibits it. And yet I'm also entangled with the original inhabitants and their histories. Good, bad, ugly, beautiful, painful, joyous, things done by them, things done to them. I believe that as humans we share in the psychic history of pain and loss of all humanity. And I believe that this shared psychic history offers a means of healing, both past, present, and future. Now, the question of reparations is more and more on the agenda in political discourse these days, reparations to indigenous peoples and to the descendants of enslaved peoples, as the Avett brothers put it in their song, We Americans. Those of us with European history live on stolen land built with stolen people. A shared psychic history suggests to me that a powerful place to begin the reparation process, the repair process, would be to start from our interconnection, our entanglement, our shared psychic history, to feel it as if it's ours, mine, for it truly is. As I say this, I say it as a place to begin. It's not the end point. It's not a replacement for tangible forms of reparation. Those, however, could be undertaken without ever actually healing the deeper psychic wound. For that healing, that repair, my admittedly tiny part includes or starts from feeling it all, taking it in. And to be honest, this can be overwhelming. Just my genetic line is overwhelming. Leave alone the psychic line of connection with the peoples of Phoenix. Leave alone all humanity. Leave alone all the universe, the cosmos. There's two ways that I try to metabolize such things, and both involve paying attention. One is, frankly, in meditation, in which I try to just be aware, awake to the reality of it all, to the extent that my knowledge at any given point in time allows me to be. Because attentiveness is a way of seeing and observing, which, in my approach to quantum theory, can create a psychic butterfly effect far beyond myself, including back in time. And the question of time, of course, is waiting in line for some episodes in the future, whatever that is. A second way is in my poetry and my music, because art is a way of paying attention, of being aware and awake, And as such, it's another way of sending that flicker of a butterfly wing, because art can heal just by existing. One morning, while riding my bike in Pasadena, I saw a familiar sight: 4 or 5 coyotes running together down the streets and in between houses. For some reason that morning I saw it differently. In my imagination, I saw them following the ancient trails of the indigenous people of the area, the Tongva. The trails are covered now by pavement and houses, but I wondered, can you coyotes, see and hear the Tongva people? Are they out there? Are they here? The result of those wonderings was my song, Dreamcatcher. I see coyotes out my window, see them running through the yards. They're sniffing out the trails of the people, 'neath the pavements and the cars. They know the people are out there, they see their spirits in the wind. But I wonder if the coyotes are howling, 'cause they see them coming back again. In my dream I'm on a mountain, looking down upon the plains. I see the people run in terror, see the blue coats coming down like rain. I see Buffalo Bill and Sitting Bull turning history into a show. They don't mention the lies the white men told, or the people dying in the snow. I see the ghost of Crazy Horse drifting low above the ground. He floats above the plains and the rivers, and through the smoke of settler towns. When I open up my eyes again, there's fences across the land. I see the people trapped inside by men, with the long rifles in their hands. I see the people disappearing. One by one they drift away. I don't hear them say the words the Great Spirit taught them how to pray. I see them turn and walk away from me, fading slowly into the shade of the Great Spirit who I see weeping over all the souls that he could not save. I see the coyotes out there running still over trails on this land. I hear the people say the words again, dream catchers in their hands. Before moving on, not all the art I share here is released or available outside the podcast, but that song, Dreamcatcher, is, should you want to listen to that again without searching in the podcast. We share in the entangled psychic history of pain and loss carried by the places where we live our lives. Let me touch now on the psychic history of the holy and the haunted. I mentioned the sacredness of rivers for the original inhabitants around Phoenix. I mentioned river as a holy thing, a holy place. Most of the great religious traditions have places and objects that are experienced as holy, blessed, in some cases even divine. There are also places and objects that are experienced as haunted, cursed, in some cases demonic. Inspired by the psychic history of Phoenix and sacred rivers, I want to focus on rivers and water. Let me turn first to the Hindu world. For many adherents of what Westerners inaccurately call Hinduism, as if it were just one thing, every inch of the Ganges River is the embodiment of sacredness. The faithful bathe in its waters and carry small quantities with them for use in rituals back home. The river is the form in which Shakti, the moving, rolling energy of the god Shiva, appears on earth and can be felt, tasted, and absorbed. There's the Buddhist world. The idea of blessed water is found in virtually all Buddhist traditions. In the Theravada tradition, water for cleansing and purification can be created in a ceremony involving a candle and symbols of the other elements, earth and air and fire. Most Mahayana Buddhists typically recite sutras or various mantras numerous times over water, which is then either consumed or used to bless homes afterwards. In the Christian world, the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox traditions in particular, blessed water is used in repelling and exorcising evil and in providing a means of grace for both body and soul. In the Muslim world, the well of Zamzam in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, is just under 70 feet away from the Kaaba, the holiest place in Islam. The well is considered a miraculously generated source of water, which opened up thousands of years ago when the son of Ibrahim, or Abraham, Ismail, or Ishmael as some know him, was left with his mother Hagar in the desert. Now, officially, Islamic teaching wouldn't suggest the water is holy in the sense of having special powers, but in the lives of many Muslims, it does. And like the water of the Ganges, the faithful take it home from their pilgrimage. Then in the Sikh world, one of the holiest sites for the Sikh people is Hamrandir Sahib, which is surrounded by a pool of water called Amritsar. Bathing in the pool is believed by many Sikhs to have restorative powers, purifying one's karma. And, as we've seen in other heritages, some carry bottles of the pool water home, particularly for sick friends and relatives. Now, I can imagine the question or assumption of some of my hearers, isn't this all just magic and superstition? I now think that entanglement, quantum theories of the universe, might offer a way to understand holy and haunted places and things. Let me explain. If quantum theory is right, if the cosmos is entangled, if humans are entangled, then might there be places and objects which have become entangled to a greater degree than others with good effects, with the effects of people and events in a place which left what we might call a blessing, the positive entanglements with the positive aspects of the people who've been there. Conversely, might there be places and objects that have been entangled in the effects of pain and hurt and evil, injustice, brutality, which occurred in these places or through those objects and people there? I believe in holy and haunted things and places, in part because I believe in the psychic histories that render them so. And I see no reason, actually, to limit such entanglement to only that of the shared psychic history of humans, leaving aside any particular teaching about unseen beings, angels, demons, jinn, ghosts, aliens, etc. I see nothing to suggest that there can't be other sentient beings, unseen by us. There is more to our world than meets the eye, and nor do I see any reason to assume such beings can be divided into classes like angels are all good and demons are all evil. The same, individually, if that word applies to other beings, the way we think it does to us, which I also question, by the way, I don't assume that any individual human is all good or all evil. Why would I assume so of any other sentient being? A psychic history of places, then, which can be holy or haunted, brings me back to the psychic history of individuals. The effects of places on people, and people on places, and the entanglements of the holy and the haunted all makes me see myself and my origins in a new light. I'm made up of such entanglements. I'm made up of the psychic history of Phoenix and of all the peoples who have been influenced by and who have influenced Phoenix. In a poem of mine called Battles, Seeds, and Suitcases, I have tried to relate particularly to the entanglement between myself and my parents. I wrote the poem before I had done any of my digging into the history of Phoenix, so I had not really considered the entanglement of place in the way I've been doing here. I really just thought the poem was about me, my parents, and my shared psychic history with them, period. Then I recorded myself reading the poem for this project, and I listened to my voice reading it. But let me come back to that. First, here's the poem. And this time I read it with no musical background, which is something that I often add. But here I just want to present the poem, Battles, Seeds, and Suitcases. 1. Battles. Two nervous peelers of secrets, hot adolescent Arizona, groping tentative fingers, finding, feeling, fearing. I learned later the disputed territory between them, the anger in the lust-kindled fires. Clutching, sweating, swelling, clinging, two no's, fading, cresting a downward slope, force of gravity, crescendo, groins and loins embattled at the front lines, gasping explosion, flaming, fearful wargasm. Or plural? I assume there were times before I came. Came, why that word? There it is on the page, arriving unbidden, like myself. I rephrase. I was not beginner's luck. After, the battle smoke clears. They agree to a wordless truce, an awkward silence. They draw apart. The same uncertain fingers reassemble the peeled layers, brief looks in rearview mirrors, each diverting contact away from their own eyes. They become presentable for the end of their parental curfew. 2. Seeds. Alive in the silence between the combatants, a shared unspoken lump in the back of the throat, sits the unmentionable rain of seed that has fallen into soil that after every battle they fear will be fertile, hoping there will be no fruit. It will not be long before they discover a single seed in a clod of mud has taken root. I am already growing there between them on the drive home, formed by the air and the wind and the weeds and mineral and stone, in the brutal, blessed, broken, twisted beauty of entwined ancestral lines, tissue and bone, archetypal dreams, stored tribal pride, sorrow, shame, and legend, oiled curls of thick hair, dimples, chins, me, spoil of war, feared, conceived, regretted. 3. Suitcases. I arrive like a piece of luggage already packed, full of things pulled from shelves and drawers, hand-me-down X's and Y's, skeltered asunder, stuffed in, unfolded, the edge of a shirt hanging limp from the lid, the sum of what I can choose to wear against the weather out there. I carried and battered that trunk house to house through the years. Now I'm in the season when my skin is thin, easily bruised and bloodied just by brushing touches against unseen edges of a door, a box. Tossed askew on my bed, my suitcase lid is open. There's nothing to give away. I'm not sorting or sifting, not discarding for sale. I've never been good at folding, so there it sits. Shirts, shorts, trousers, the odd sock, all a ramble, tangled, still. I linger indecisive, though there is something I can do. Touch, smell, see, take in hand each random thing, the jumbled assemblage of myself laid bare, waiting, erring, in the quiet room. As I said a minute ago, I did not consciously touch the psychic history of Phoenix when I wrote the poem, because I didn't know any of the history of the peoples who dwelt there long before my physical ancestors migrated. But reading it as I prepared for this, battles, a long history, Atamel, Apache, Spanish, whites, seeds, water, fertility, life, suitcases, moving, transitory. And these lines, formed by the air and wind and weeds and mineral and stone, stored tribal pride, me, spoil of war. I see in a new way how entangled I am. The psychic history of pain and loss, and the holy and the haunted history of Phoenix, and my individual psychic history related to my parents, their histories, and their parents, the history of Christianity of my mother, the shame, isolation, aloneness, anxieties, and fears my parents must have felt when I was conceived, and the mutual accusing and blaming when they found themselves with an unexpected, unwanted child in 1950s Arizona. I carry all of that inside of me, entangled in my soul, and so it became entangled in the poem in ways I was not consciously doing. The poem ends with the lines, "I linger indecisive, though there is something I can do. Touch, smell, see, take in hand each random thing, the jumbled assemblage of myself laid bare, waiting, airing in the quiet room." And that suggests a way for me, for anyone, for you perhaps, to face our entanglements, the psychic histories of places and the haunted and the holy of all of life, and to face our own individual psychic history. Pay attention, touch, smell, see, take in hand all the apparently random jumbled bits of ourselves. Allow them to be laid bare and airing in a quiet room. In doing so, we send ourselves butterfly wings. Because when we do, we cause butterfly effects to reverberate all through the synapses and webs of our shared psychic histories, adding a little to the healing of it all, of us all. And next, I'm headed to Granada Hills, where an unseen friend awaits, all dressed in black, and a rowboat, and some towels stuffed into a child's pockets, and a yellow room in a gray house. Until next time.